أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، والحمد لله الذي هدانا لهذا وما كنا لنهتدي لولا أن هدانا الله، والصلاة والسلام على إمام القبلتين ونبي الحرمين وأفضل الثقلين وجد الحسن والحسين، الذي سمي في السماء بأحمد وفي الأرض بأبي القاسم محمد. وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين الصادقين، والذين ذهب الله عنهم الرجس وطهرهم تطهيرا. اللهم صل وسلم وزد وبارك على صاحب الدعوة النبوية والسولة الحيدرية والإسمة الفاطمية والحلم الحسنية والشجاعة الحسينية والعبادة السجادية والماتر الباقرية والآثار الجعفرية والعلوم الكادمية والحجج الردوية والجود التقوية والنقاوة النقوية والهيبة العسكرية والغيبة الإلهية. اللهم عجل فرجه وصاهل مخرجه. أما بعد، فقد قال الله في كتابه الكريم: بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم: والذين كفروا أعمالهم كسراب بقيع يحسبه الظمآن ماء حتى إذا جاءه لم يجده شيئا ووجد الله عنده فوفاه حسابه والله سريع الحساب. صدق الله العلي العظيم. For the love of Ahlul Bayt alayhim as-salam, sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. For the love of Fatima Zahra, a second salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. To give our condolences to the Imam of our time upon these days where we commemorate the martyrdom of his grandfather Hussein, a louder salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. The martyrdom of Imam al-Hussein in Karbala was an event which sent shockwaves throughout the world. And it's an event which seems to be a paradox when one looks at the nature of time. Because the general nature of time states that the more time goes on, the more an event is forgotten. Even those events just 60, 70 years ago, which were of a great geopolitical significance, you find those events are not Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. If I could request that you move a little bit closer towards the mimbar, that way those who come later, they can sit in the back, inshaAllah. One more salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Jazakumullah. And I don't mind children making noises in the lecture. They're children after all, and they should have that freedom. But I request the adults to limit your conversations, at least within this hall. A louder salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. So you find that the nature of time, it states that the more time goes on, the less an event is remembered. Even if that event, which 40, 50 years ago was changing the shape of the world, many people, they don't remember the details of that event. But no, if I go at another level, which is even more personal, and I ask you that what is the day of the death of your great-grandfather, many of you will say that we don't know the day of their death. And some will even say that we may not even know what their name is. This is despite the fact that this individual, you are directly from their lineage just 2 or 3 generations away from him. But when it comes to the event of the martyrdom of Imam al-Hussein, you find that we are aware of the details, we are aware of the date of the martyrdom of Imam al-Hussein. And this is despite the fact that from the material perspective, everything was against Ahlul Bayt, and it was on the side of Banu Umayyah. That wealth on the side of Banu Umayyah. The media, if we're going to use modern terminology, is on the side of Banu Umayyah. Political influence is on the side of Banu Umayyah. Then the question is that what was on the side of Ahlul Bayt, that today no one speaks of Banu Umayyah in the way that they speak of Imam al-Hussein? And the answer is that the Mashiach and the will of God was on the side of Ahlul Bayt. Now, what do I mean by this? What I mean by this is that when God has decreed something, even if the world came together to stop it, they won't be able to stop it. You know, God decreed that amongst the children of Israel, there would be a prophet by the name of Moses, by the name of Musa, and this prophet would overthrow the Fir'aun of that time period. So what did Pharaoh do? Pharaoh, he began to kill each of the male children of Banu Israel. And as he's killing each of these male children, he thinks that this prophecy isn't going to be fulfilled. But what does Allah do? Allah says that you are trying to stop my decree. I'll create such a system that Musa who will be your downfall, that Musa will be raised by your own hands within your own house. So no matter what the circumstances are, if the decree of God is there, it will manifest itself. In the same way, when all of the material means are on the side of Banu Umayyah, Allah created a system that azad, that remembrance of Imam al-Hussein, which would be the downfall of that ideology, that remembrance of Imam al-Hussein begins in the very lands of Banu Umayyah. That when Sayyida Zainab, she goes to the court of Yazid and she gives her famous sermon, there were many individuals who were non-Muslims in the Umayyad courts, because Banu Umayyah tried to model themselves after the Byzantine Empire, whereas the Abbasids who would come later, they would try to model themselves after the Iranian or the Sassanid Empire. And in this manner, we find that Yazid would have many Christian advisors and observers within his court. When Sayyida Zainab gives her sermon in the court of Yazid, many of them, they begin to ask that whose head has just been brought. When they would be told that this is the head of Hussein, they would say, which Hussein? The reply would come that it is the son of Fatima. They would say, Fatima, the daughter of your prophet. The works of history record that one of those Christians in the court of Yazid would say that I am from the lineage of the disciple of Isa. And because I am from the lineage of the disciple of Jesus, my people, they still give me respect. But waylakum ya Yazid, that woe be upon you. You have killed the son of the daughter of your prophet. So you find in this manner that when all of truth was trying to be hidden, Allah manifested itself at the highest level. But when God manifests the truth, for certain people, they are able to recognize it and it becomes a source of paradise. And for another group of people, it becomes a proof against them and it becomes a source of torment and punishment. And I'll give you an example. There are many mentions in the works of history that some of the killers of Imam al-Hussein, their azab, their punishment, it began within this world. For example, Tabari, in volume 5 of his famous Tarikh, he says that there was a man from the tribe of Aban ibn Darim. This individual, on the day of Ashura, he said to Imam al-Hussein that, "O Hussein, may you never drink from the Furat." The narrator of this incident, Qasim, who was the son of Asbagh ibn Nabata, the famous companion of Amir al-Mu'mineen, he says that when I saw this individual near the end of his life, he would drink water upon water. And as much water as he would drink, he had such a disease that his thirst would not be quenched. So you find in one manner, for one group, Imam al-Hussein was a path to salvation. But for another group, he was a path for their torment and their punishment. I'll give you another example. Sayyid ibn Tawusi records that there was an individual by the name of Jabir ibn Yazid al-Awdi. This individual, when he saw the body of Imam al-Hussein laying on the 10th of Muharram, he went and he took the turban of Imam al-Hussein as he was looting the body of the Imam, and he placed that turban upon his head. And it is stated in that riwayah, which Sayyid ibn Tawus reports from Imam Zainul Abidin, that this individual began to suffer from insanity. But on the same time, on the other side, when we look in our traditions, we also have traditions that say that Imam al-Rida, he gave his cloak to Dibal al-Khuzai. And Dibal al-Khuzai had a servant within his home who was sick. So he takes one thread of the cloak of Imam al-Rida, he places it upon that servant, and that servant regains her vision and she is healed. So over here, look at the dichotomy. On one side, an individual took a clothing item of the Imam, that turban, and he gets a torment and a punishment. On the other side, Imam al-Rida is giving an article of clothing, his cloak to Debal. Debal gains shifa. What is the difference between the two sides? The difference between the two sides is that ma'rifah and that understanding they had of Sayyid al-Shuhada. Those who understood him, he was a path to paradise. And those who rejected him, he was a source of their torment. That's why when you look throughout history, there has been many different understandings of Imam al-Hussein even within the school of Ahlul Bayt. For example, one group of individuals said that one should not study Karbala critically. You say to them, what do you mean that you shouldn't study Karbala critically? They said that Imam al-Hussein said, Amarani Rasulullah bi amrin wa ana madin fihi, that the Prophet commanded me to do something and I carried it out. According to them, Karbala was just a command for Imam al-Hussein and it doesn't apply to the rest of the ummah. We say yes, without a doubt, at the highest level, Karbala's application is to Sayyid al-Shuhada. But when Rasulullah said that if you see Banu Umayyah upon my mimbar, take him up off that mimbar, that was towards everyone. Yes, it's a different matter that Imam al-Hussein carried it out. So you find that this understanding falls short. Another group of individuals, they said, when they tried to understand Karbala, is they said that Karbala was for Imam al-Hussein to die and to save the Shia from their sins. There are many Zakireen, many orators, who when they present Karbala, they present it almost from this angle. But what is the problem with this angle? Number one, when we understand this, without a doubt, no one doubts the traditions of Shafa'at. When it comes to the traditions about mourning for Imam al-Hussein, they are in such abundance that no one can have any shak or any doubt about them. For example, it is stated that one day, Abdullah al-Makfuf, a blind poet, he comes to Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq salawatullahi wa salamuhu alayhi. When Abdullah al-Makfuf, he comes to the Imam, he recites a line of poetry in front of Imam al-Sadiq. The Imam, he replies by saying that whoever recites a line of poetry for my grandfather Hussein, and 50 individuals cry, Falahul Jannah, for him is paradise. Then the Imam says, no, 50 is too much, 40 individuals. Then he says 30, 20, 10, until he finally says, Man anshada fi jaddi al-Husayn shi'ran wa abka wahidan falahul jannah. That whoever recites a line of poetry for my grandfather Hussein, and one individual cries from his paradise, but no, even that is not enough. Anyone who himself cries or makes the expression as if he is crying, for that individual is paradise. You see, traditions like this about the intercession of Ahlul Bayt cannot be doubted. But there is a difference between a goal and an outcome. The goal of Imam al-Hussein was not just for shafa'at to reach us. The goal of the Imam was to enliven the deen. And the outcome of the effort of Imam al-Hussein is that his sacrifice was so great that the one who remembers him, you find that the door of intercession opens for that individual. So you see, at the end of the day, one's perspective has a profound impact on how they approach Sayyid al-Shuhada. But with this introduction said, at the beginning of this lecture, I posed a question. And that question was this, is that how is it that the more time goes on, the more Karbala is remembered? Because the nature of time is that the more time passes from an event, the less it is remembered. Without a doubt, one aspect of this, out of the many different aspects, is that Imam al-Hussein is an individual who reached that maqam in spirituality known as fana or annihilation. That what is meant by fana or annihilation? You see, there is a tradition of Rasulullah, the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam. The Prophet in that tradition, he says, Mutu qabla an tamut. That die before you die. Now the question is, what does this tradition mean, that die before you die? At the outward, it sounds like a contradiction. But this tradition over here, it is not referring to any form of biological or physical death. But it is saying, O human being, you have shackled yourself within this world. And you have placed shackles upon your goals, upon yourself, upon your mind. A point needs to come that if you are going to be an insan, and if you are going to understand your essence, you need to remove these shackles from you. And that within this world, which is an imagination, you go towards that which is real behind it. You know what I mean by this is that when you look in the postmodernist world, which I mentioned on the first night, one key aspect of this world is that it keeps mankind busy in pursuits which are not real and true in and of themselves, but rather they are an illusion. For example, when you look at the construct of money, that what is wealth and money, at the end of the day, what gives money value? I'm not saying it is not important. There are traditions that say that to gain a rizq is ibadah. But at the end of the day, a pound or a euro, I don't think you use euros anymore, what gives that pound that value? That pound has a value because human society came together and they were in agreement that this pound over here has a value and we can use it to get goods. In that sense, it is not something which is real. It is a construct which we, because of our agreement amongst each other, we have given it value. There are many things in life which, although they may seem very real to us in the moment, in fact, they are an illusion. And the Quran points to this reality with a number of metaphors. For example, in Surah An-Nur, in chapter 24, verse 39, the verse which I recited at the beginning of this lecture, Allah, He describes the actions of the disbelievers. And in that ayat He says, وَالَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا أَعْمَالُهُمْ كَسَرَابٍ بَقِيَّةٍ. He says those individuals who disbelieve, their actions are like a mirage in the plain. You know, in the desert when you go, oftentimes when people, they would see the reflection in the desert from the sun, they would begin to think that it's water. And in that way, it would create a mirage. The Quran is saying over here that the actions of the disbelievers are like a mirage. And the word it uses in Arabic is sarab. And it says these individuals, يَحْسَبَهُ الظِّمْآنُ مَاءً حَتَّى إِذَا جَاءَهُ لَمْ يَجِدْهُ شَيْئًا. This mirage, this illusion in the desert, it is as if a thirsty person thinks that it's water. And when he comes close to it, he finds that nothing is over there. This ayat is showing that there will be people upon this world that what they are pursuing, even though in that moment it feels as if it is very real towards them, when they come closer towards it, it is as if it was nothing but an imagination. It was an illusion. There is another ayat of the Quran that expands upon this. And this verse of the Quran, it describes all of the different forms of illusions and mirages that we'll face in our life, thinking that they are real, but at the end of the day, they bring us no value. That verse is in Surah Al-Hadid, chapter 57, verse 20. Within that verse, Allah says, وَاعْلَمُوا أَنَّمَا الْحَيَاةُ الدُّنْيَا لَعِبٌ وَلَهْوٌ وَزِينَةٌ وَتَفَاخُرٌ بَيْنَكُمْ وَتَكَاثُرٌ فِي الْأَمْوَالِ وَالْأَوْلَادِ. This verse is saying that if you want to understand the reality of this world, the reality of this world is that it is play, an idle sport, and it is a pursuit of beauty, and it is a pursuit of pride amongst you, and it is a accumulation of wealth and children. You know, this verse over here is showing that all of these different aspects, they stem from the love of this world. You see, the love of this world and the love to be permanent isn't something negative. It's very natural. Every individual desires to be remembered. And every individual desires life. That's why Amir al-Mu'mineen, when he would describe this world, he would say this world is that marketplace from where the hereafter would be acquired. In other words, it is attachment to this world which is negative, but this world in and of itself isn't anything negative. At the end of the day, this world saw the presence of Muhammad and Ali Muhammad over here. So if it was negative, God would not send Ahlul Bayt towards this realm. So you find that is one aspect. But over here within this ayat, Allah is showing that this love of the world, which is very natural, as we go through life and we become more advanced and we get older, it begins to take different forms. The first form that this ayat says is al-la'ibun. That the first form of the love of this world is that a child, when he is there, he plays based on imagination. You know, a child doesn't need a fancy car to enjoy himself. You place a water bottle in front of him, which is half full, he'll begin to flip it, as some of you are doing in front of me. But you find that that imagination, it entertains them. So you find that the first stage is a la'ibun. Then it says that the second stage is a lahwun. It is idle sport. When that child becomes older, now he is not satisfied with being given a cardboard box and being told go and play in it. You find that what he wants is more sophisticated. He wants an Xbox. He wants a PlayStation. He wants something which is play, but it has an objective behind it. So you find this is the second stage. Then the third thing which this ayat it mentions is that zinatun. Eventually that child, he reaches the stage of adolescence. Now he's not satisfied with toys or anything of that nature. Now he is satisfied with the pursuit of beauty. Whether it is his own clothing, whether it is in the opposite gender, whether it is in the car that he drives. But after that, you find the human development doesn't stop. The next thing the verse mentions is وَتَفَاخُرٌ بَيْنَكُمْ. After you've had this material time of your life, now you want to be honored in front of other people, isn't it? That you want a status in front of other people. You want to be known in front of other people. But then the fifth thing that this verse mentions, وَتَكَاثُرٌ فِي الْأَمْوَالِ وَالْأَوْلَادِ. That the final stage, after a person, as a child, he goes through the stage of playing. And in his adolescence, he goes to the stage of pursuing beauty. And he desires a position. At the final level, a person begins to think of his legacy. That what will I leave behind within this world? That he begins to think of that wealth of his children who are his legacy. You see, the Quran is alluding that all of these different forms, yes, even though they are important, they have a value, there needs to be a deeper purpose behind it. You know, Imam al-Hussein on the day of Ashura, he would remind the side of Umar ibn Sa'ad that you individuals are a group of individuals who have lost your purpose in life. It is stated that in the morning of Ashura, Imam al-Hussein, the first thing he did on the morning of Ashura is that he ordered his companions to dig a trench around the tents. And he ordered for all of the tents to be moved closer together. Because when the army of Umar bin Saad is fighting, the Imam wanted them to come from one direction. So behind him there was a trench, he filled it with firewood, and a fire was lit. And the tents, they were brought closer together. Now the army of Umar ibn Saad, it had gathered in front of Sayyid al-Shuhada. Imam al-Hussein on the morning of Ashura, at the time of Fajr, he gives a sermon which is immortalized in history. You know, in that sermon, before it was given, Muslim ibn al-Awsaja says to the Imam that, "Oh Imam, right now the army of Umar bin Saad isn't fully prepared. This is the proper moment that we should begin firing arrows to the other side." You know what Sayyid al-Shuhada says? The Imam says, "I do not want to be the aggressor on this day." In other words, the way of Ahlul Bayt is that they would give people chance after chance. And this was the way of the awliya and the prophets. You know, at the end of the day, when the son of Nuh, he said that I'm not going to believe in God, what did Nuh do? Even when that flood it came, Nuh would preach to his son to the final moment. And Imam al-Hussein did the same thing on the day of Ashura. That as long as there is a chance of these individuals to be guided, I, Hussein, will pass that guidance towards those individuals. So the Imam, he stands up in front of the army of Umar bin Saad. And when the Imam, he stands up in front of that army, he says, "Ayyuhan nas isma'uni wa la ta'jilu." That, "Oh people, listen to me, don't make haste right now. Do you not know that I have a haqq and I have a right over you?" In other words, when the Imam says that I have a right over you, the Imam is indirectly alluding to the verse of the Quran that says, Ya ayyuhalladina amanu atiyullaha wa atiyur rasula wa ulil amri minkum. That, O you who believe, obey Allah and obey His Prophet and those who have been given authority. You know, in this ayat over here, there are three groups of people who are mentioned. Allah, number one, His Prophet, number two, and those who have been given authority, number three. Naturally, the word obedience should come up 3 times. But over here in this verse, the word obedience is used twice. It is used before Allah and it is used before Rasulullah. So in this ayat, Allah says, obey Allah and obey His Prophet and those who have been given authority. You know what this shows? Number one, it shows there are 2 types of obedience. Number one, that obedience which is completely unrestricted, which is the obedience of God. But at the second level, when this ayat does not differentiate between the obedience between the Prophet and the Ulil Amr, this must mean that their actions are one and the same. So if there is an individual who invents a salat that wasn't there in the time of Rasulullah, that individual cannot be amongst the Ulil Amr in this ayat. Why? Because either you obey that individual or you obey Rasulullah. In other words, if there is a group which the people, they have a right from this group and that group has a right over the people, there must be consistency in their action. There must not be contradiction in their action. That looking at the first of them is like you looked at the last of them. And looking at the last of them is like looking at the first of them. And there is only one group about whom it is stated, Awwaluna Muhammad, Akhiruna Muhammad, Awsatuna Muhammad, Kulluna Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam. That this consistent reality is seen within all of us. So after that, Imam al-Hussein, he mentions that, do you not know that I have a right over you? And he begins to speak to them about the nature of this world. He says, O people, know that the nature of this world is that it is finite, that it is finite, it doesn't stay. The fragrances of this world, they come and they go. And then after that, he says to them to build a house in this world. In other words, to make yourself comfortable within this world is like to build a house upon a slope. If you build a house on a slope, there's no stability over there. That even if it maintains itself for a year or two, eventually things are going to come crashing down. And Imam al-Hussein is reminding these individuals of this reality, that you individuals have gotten caught in a world of illusion instead of reality. But on the opposite side, you see the ashab of Imam al-Hussein. The ashab of Imam al-Hussein are those individuals that when one individual comes to Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq salawatullahi wa salamuhu alayhi, he says to the Imam, Akhbirni an ashab al-Hussein. That tell me who were the companions of Imam al-Hussein. The Imam says that these are those individuals كشف لهم الغطاء حتى رأوا منازلهم من الجنة. These are those individuals that the veils were removed from their eyes until they saw their maqam and their status in paradise. That what does this hadith mean? That they saw their maqam and their status in paradise. You know, when you look at the ayat of the Quran, when they describe paradise, often they'll use the demonstrative pronoun for afar, meaning they'll use the word that. It'll say tilka al-jannah. The difference between tilka and hadihi in Arabic is that when something is close, you say hadihi, like this in the English language. And when something is far, you use the word tilka to demonstrate that it is far, or like the word that in English. So all of these verses of the Quran, when they mention paradise, they'll say that paradise. In other words, don't become complacent, work for paradise. But I send my salam upon the ashab of Sayyid al-Shuhada. That when Imam al-Hussein speaks to his companions, he doesn't say that paradise which is afar. He says, Ayyuhal kiram hadihil jannat futihat abwabuha. That this paradise which is in front of you, its doors have already been opened for you. You know, there is an entire idea in philosophy. And that idea is what we call in Arabic tajassudul a'mal. You know what this idea says? It says that each and every one of you, you are creating your hell and you are creating your heaven in every moment. There is a verse of the Quran that says, Ma tadzona illa ma kuntum ta'malun. That the only reward you will receive is your actions. Now, I'll give you another verse to drive this point even farther. The verse from the famous surah, Surah Al-Zilzal, إِذَا زُلْزِلَتِ الْأَرْضُ زِلْزَالَهَا, the ending ayat of this verse, it says that whoever has done an atom's weight of good will see it. And whoever has done an atom's weight of evil will see it. I say, can you see an action when it is completed? No, you can't. When that action is done, it is gone. It was a moment in time. It is past us. So what the traditions they say is that each of these different entities a person is given in paradise, that is a different form of that action in paradise. That's why when they came to Imam Ja'far as-Sadiq salawatullahi wa salamuhu alayhi, when they came to Imam as-Sadiq, they said to the Imam that, "Oh Imam, show us where we can find paradise upon this world." The Imam says that I will tell you something that if you hold on to it, you will never leave paradise. When the Imam says you will never leave paradise, it implies you are already in heaven. The Imam says that our wilaya is that paradise. In other words, in this dunya, if one holds on to wilaya, this belief creates that experience of paradise upon this earth. That what greater paradise is there for a believer than the love of Amir al-Mu'mineen and the love of Sayyid al-Shuhada? That in the truest sense, that is paradise for a believer. So you find the ashab of Imam al-Hussein are those individuals who reached such a maqam that they saw their true position in the hereafter because they understood the true nature of this world. You know, each of these companions are those individuals who reach the status of yaqeen and certainty. It is stated that there was one individual by the name of Abu Tumama from the ashab of Sayyid al-Shuhada. This Abu Tumama, as the moment of Salatul Dhuhr was coming, Abu Tumama, he says that the time of prayer is approaching and I'm going to pray Salatul Dhuhr. Imam al-Hussein says, "Oh Abu Tumama, you are an individual who remembered Salat, so may Allah remember you on the Day of Judgment." Oftentimes, some orators who haven't examined the historical sources, they'll say that both sides prayed Salat. That the side of Imam al-Hussein prayed, the side of Umar bin Saad prayed. If you look at the maqatil, the reality in the maqatil is that if there was a side which was stopping for Salat, it was the side of Sayyid al-Shuhada. And if there was a side where there were the Qurra of the Quran like Burayr and Habib ibn Madahir, then these individuals were on the side of Sayyid al-Shuhada. Because on this side, they saw the reality of the world. And on the other side, they saw an illusion. وَالَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا أَعْمَالُهُمْ كَسَرَابٍ, and the reality of their actions is like it is a mirage within this world. You see, the ashab of Imam al-Hussein are those individuals that in a famous ziyarah known as Ziyaratul Rajabiyah, when we describe them, we say, Assalamu alaikum ayyuhar rabbaniyun. That, O ashab of Sayyid al-Shuhada, you are those individuals who are godly individuals. You remained in the remembrance of your Lord. Whatever you did was for Sayyid al-Shuhada. Even those individuals who were elderly and couldn't fight on the day of Ashura, like Sa'id ibn Jubair. As the time of Salat it came, Sa'id ibn Jubair, he says to the Imam that, "Oh Imam, I am not able to fight, but my body can still take arrow after arrow into it." That what are the companions of Imam al-Hussein? As Imam al-Hussein begins his salat, Sa'id ibn Jubair, he stands in front of Sayyid al-Shuhada and they begin to fire arrow after arrow into the body of Sa'id. And the moment that the Imam says, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah, Sa'id, he says, Assalamu alayka yabna Rasulullah, and he falls towards the ground. You know, you have a companion like Zuhair ibn al-Qayn. The army of Umar bin Saad, they say, "O Zuhair, come towards our side." Zuhair, he replies by saying that even if you kill me and you dismember my body and you burn me and you throw my ashes, even if you do this 1,000 times, I will remain on the side of Hussein. But as this nights they progress, and beginning tomorrow we remember the musibah of Banu Hashim by remembering the Messiah of On and Muhammad. Traditionally, this is that final night where we remember the companions of Imam al-Hussein. And there is no justice to the companions if we do not remember that companion who was in Kufa by the name of Muslim ibn Aqil. You know, it's stated that when Muslim bin Aqil was taken to the court of Ibn Ziyad, that after they had fought Muslim and Muslim was bleeding, Ibn Ziyad, he gives water to Muslim bin Aqil. And Muslim, as he's beginning to drink from the water, his blood, it spatters into that water. Muslim, he throws the water away. They bring another bowl of water for Muslim, he throws it away again. You know, it's as if even though Muslim was not there in Karbala, for a moment, Muslim, he felt the thirst that Aba Fadl Abbas and Imam al-Hussein would feel upon the day of Ashura. It's stated that Muslim, a point it comes where Ibn Ziyad, he takes Muslim to the top of the Darul Amara towards the governor's palace. When he takes Muslim to the top of the palace, before they cut the neck of Muslim ibn Aqil, Muslim, he says, Assalamu alayka ya Aba Abdullah. You know, Imam al-Hussein in one of the halting stations in Zubala, Imam al-Hussein, he hears about the martyrdom of Muslim bin Aqil. It is stated that the Imam, he says that, O Zainab, bring me the daughter of Muslim. When the daughter of Muslim is brought in front of the Imam places his hand on the head of the daughter of Muslim. He places earrings upon the ears of Muslim's daughter. The daughter of Muslim says that, have I become yatim? Why are you treating me like an orphan? You know, the maqtal, it doesn't say this, but But perhaps at that moment, the Imam's own daughter Sakina would be watching. That when a person becomes yatim, you place your hand upon their head, you place earrings upon their ear. But I say, oh Aba Abdullah, come to the night of Ashura as your daughter runs from tent to tent. A point it comes where Shemari grabs the head of Sakina, those earrings on the ears of Sakina. He begins to pull those earrings. That what was the night of Sham-e Ghariba for the daughter of Imam al-Hussein. You know, it is stated that at one point, water was given to the family of Ahlul Bayt on that night. Sayyida Zainab gives water to Sakina. Sakina says, oh aunt, why don't you drink from the water? Sayyida Zainab says, oh Sakina, first children are to drink, then the elders they drink. At that moment, Sakina, she takes that water. She begins to go towards the Maqtal. Sayyida Zainab says, oh Sakina, where are you going? She says, oh my aunt, you are the one who said that children drink water first. I am looking for my brother Ali Asghar, the one. ألا لعنة الله على القوم الظالمين. Ya Allah, we ask through the right of Muhammad and Ali Muhammad, wherever the followers of Ahlul Bayt are in difficulty, help them. Wherever they're sick and ailing, cure them. Ya Allah, grant us the shafa of Muhammad and Ali Muhammad. Grant us the ziyarah of Muhammad and Ali Muhammad. Grant us the opportunity to see the 12th of Muhammad and Ali Muhammad, Matam-e Hussein.